Hello everyone, today we're going to look at payroll deductions. There are several types of payroll deductions. We'll cover some of the more basic ones. FICA, or the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, is a U.S. federal payroll tax that funds things like Social Security and Medicare. These are both percentages of your gross income. So Social Security is 6.2% of your gross income, up to, as of 2025, an annual income of $176,100, which means if you make more than that, you're not taxed any further. Medicare is 1.45% of all of your gross income, so it doesn't matter how much you make, you're always going to get Medicare taken out. So let's find how much Social Security and Medicare tax is deducted if a person makes $1,650 this week. So Social Security is 6.2% of $1,650. So it's a basic percent problem. So 6.2% as a decimal is 0.0625. We multiply that by $1,650 and we get $102.30. So you can remember it's dollars. So make sure you're always rounding to the nearest hundredth. Medicare is 1.45% of $1,650. So that's equivalent to 0.0145 times $1,650, which gives $23.93. So we're going to talk about federal income tax next. In order to do federal income tax, we're going to need a table to determine how much is taken out. And there are several tables that you can look through, which can be found at that website right there, at the irs.gov. If it doesn't open up to page 13, I believe it's page 13 that the tables start at. Sometimes it opens up to page 13, sometimes it opens up to page 1. So I'm pretty sure it's page 13 that they start at. And we need to know a few things before we can read the table. We need to know how often we're getting paid. So there's separate tables for if we're getting paid weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, or monthly. We also need to know how we're filing. So we could be filing single or married filing separately. We could be filed married filing jointly, or we could be head of household. And then lastly, we also need to know if we have more than one job, or if you're filing married jointly, if you both work. So here's an example of one of them. This is a bi-weekly payroll. So you'll see at the top, it says bi-weekly. And then married filing jointly, head of household, single or married filing separately. And then within each of those, there is standard withholding and then Form W-4, Step 2 checkbox withholding. So standard withholding is standard, like it says. And then the Form W-2 Step 2 checkbox is when you have more than one job, or if you're filing married jointly where you're both working. So we're going to just focus on standard withholding for these problems. So we're not going to really worry about this step here. So we're just going to assume everyone is filing standard. And then over on the left, we have the adjusted wage amount, which again, we're not going to worry about. So just the wage amount. And it has at least and then but less than. So we need to find where our dollar amount comes into play in these tables. Okay. So let's find the federal income tax withheld for each situation, assuming, again, as I said, that each has a standard withholding. So we have different people. We have how they're filing and the frequency with which they are filing, and then their wages. So if we notice, the first two are weekly. So we're going to look at the table that is weekly. So that is this one here. So I just grabbed part of it from the IRS website. So weekly, person A was filing single. So we're going to be looking over here, single standard withholding. And the wages was $950. So we're going to look for where $950 would fall into play in these at least but less than. So $950 is right here. It's at least $945, but it's less than $955. So the federal tax would be, if we go over to where these two meet, $75. So the other one from the table that was also weekly was married, filing married jointly. So we're going to be looking at this one. and then the wages were $825. So if we notice, we see two $825 on our table here, but only one of them actually fits the bill. So at least 825 is includes equal to, but less than does not. So if it is one of the numbers that's on kind of the cusp on both of them, it's going to be the one that includes the at least, because 825 is at least 825, but 825 is not less than 825. So we're going to go to this column, or this row rather, and we're going to see that it's $25. So you have $75 for the first one, $25 for the second one. The next two are bi-weekly. So we're going to find head of household $1,245 and single $1,500 on the next table. So again, we've got bi-weekly here. So the head of household is in the middle, again, standard withholding, and the dollar amount was $1,245. So $1,245 is another one where we see it twice, and we want the one where the $1,245 is at least. So that would be $39 right here. So head of house standard withholding, at least $1,250, but less than $1,265. And then we go to the other one from the table, which again was bi-weekly. It was single, so we're going to be over here, standard withholding, and then it was $1,500 for the wages. So $1,500 is right here, between $1,485 and $1,505. And we see that the withholding is the $101 right here on the table. So we fill in those two. And then the last one, single monthly, $54.50. So we'll go to the table that is monthly. So now we see a monthly one. Notice these numbers are all a lot bigger. And then it was filing single, and again standard. So we're going to look in this column. And then we want to find $54.50 on the wages. So $54.50 will be right here between $54.30 and $5,500. And if we go over, that is $503. So we have $503 there. There are several other deductions depending on your employer and the state where you work. Some states have an income tax, some don't. Some employers, you might have health insurance taken out, or you might be on someone else's health insurance, so you don't have it taken out. If you're in a union, your union dues will be taken out of your paycheck. You might have a retirement fund. There's a whole lot of other things that you could have deducted from your paycheck. These are typically either a fixed amount, like your union dues might be a fixed amount. Your health insurance is probably a fixed amount, or it might be a percentage of your gross income, like state income tax might be, retirement funds might be, things like that. So if your retirement deduction is 2.5% of your gross income, find how much is taken from your paycheck for the following amounts. So $1,200. So if it's a percentage, we're just using that basic percent problem from before. We're going to take 2.5%, change it to a decimal, so that's 0.025, and multiply by your gross income, and we get $30. What if we have a gross income of $2,500? So again, we're going to take that $2,500 multiplied by 0.025, and that gives us a deduction of $63.50. A person's net pay is found by taking their gross pay and subtracting any deductions. So find a person's net pay if they received a bi-weekly paycheck and has Social Security, Medicare, federal income tax, and a retirement amount of 3% taken out. Assume they file single with standard withholding. So we're going to set up this table here. So we have gross pay, then we have Social Security, Medicare, retirement, federal income, and then we're going to find the total deductions and then their net pay. So Social Security, remember, is 6.2% of the gross pay. So we're going to take the gross pay, multiply by 0.062, 2 to get the numbers for Social Security. And if we do that, we should get those guys right there. And I want you to double check that math, make sure those are correct. For Medicare, that's 1.45%. So we're going to multiply the gross pay by 0.0145. And again, I want you to actually do it out. Make sure you get the same numbers. And we should get those guys. Retirement, 3%. So we're going to multiply the gross pay by 0.03. Again, please pause the video, double check that you're getting the same numbers. For federal income, we're going to need that bi-weekly table. So make sure you have that table in front of you, and again, double check that you're getting the same numbers here. So I'm not going to go through it on here, but you know, those tables should be on Canvas that you can check out. So make sure you're looking at bi-weekly. Make sure you're looking at single with standard withholding, and see if you can find the correct row and the same numbers. So we should be getting 66, 79, 101, and 118 for those gross pay. And then total deductions, we're just going to add those 4 deductions up, and we should be getting those 4. Again, please do double check these. And then the net pay, again, is the gross pay minus the total deduction. So for the first one, we should get $1,200 minus $193.80. And that gives us $1,006.20. And then the same for each of those. And again, please do double check those. Okay. So let me know if you have any questions.